Summer, 1956. Moscow's Central Air Defense Command headquarters smells like cigarette smoke and confidence. Marshal Pavel Batitsky leans over a map table where red pins mark radar stations stretching from East Germany to the Pacific, a 15,000-mile wall of electronic eyes. Behind him, illuminated status boards glow green. Every sector reports operational. Every station reports ready. Batitsky runs the most sophisticated air defense network ever built. 3,000 radar installations, 5,000 anti-aircraft batteries, 14 fighter regiments flying the MiG-17, a swept-wing interceptor that can climb to 55 feet and tear anything from the sky at Mach 1.1. The Americans have their B-52s, sure, lumbering bombers built for nuclear apocalypse. But those bombers fly at 45,000 feet, well within reach, well within killing range. The radar web can detect a formation of bombers 300 miles out. Plenty of time to scramble interceptors. Plenty of time to lock guns and missiles. No aircraft exists that Soviet defenses cannot see, cannot reach, cannot destroy. Physics guarantees it. The MiG-17 service ceiling is absolute. American reconnaissance planes, the lumbering RB-47s, the antique RB-50s, all fly lower, slower, fatter. Easy prey. At air bases across the USSR, MiG pilots walk to their aircraft with the swagger of men who own the sky. They've trained for this. High-altitude intercepts, head-on gun passes. The Americans wouldn't dare test them. And if they did, the wreckage would decorate Siberian forests within minutes. In Washington, Soviet analysts brief Khrushchev on American capabilities. The reports are clear. No American aircraft can fly above 60,000 feet. None. The laws of aerodynamics, engine performance, and wing loading make higher flight impossible. The U.S. has nothing that can challenge Soviet airspace at altitudes beyond interceptor range. The technology doesn't exist. Khrushchev sleeps well. But in the Nevada desert, 7,200 miles west of Moscow, a man named Tony Levere pushes rudder pedals inside a cockpit that smells like aviation fuel and fear. The aircraft around him groans, a sound like sheet metal flexing in wind. The wings, impossibly long and thin, bend upward 6 feet from root to tip. His pressure suit restricts every movement. The canopy, unpressurized, frosts with condensation at altitude. Levier climbs, 60,000 feet, 65,000. The sky outside darkens from blue to purple to black. Stars appear in daylight. The curvature of Earth becomes visible. His engine, a Pratt & Whitney J57 modified to burn exotic fuel, screams in the thin air. 70,000 feet. The altimeter keeps climbing. Batitsky doesn't know about Levere. Khrushchev doesn't know about the Skunk Works. Soviet intelligence doesn't know about Lockheed's Project Aquatone. They don't know about the bicycle landing gear, the titanium airframe, the cameras that can photograph a golf ball from 13 miles up. They don't know they're already beaten. Because on July 4th, 1956, American Independence Day, chosen deliberately, a U-2 will cross into Soviet airspace. It will fly directly over Moscow. It will photograph the Kremlin, Red Square, and every military installation within 100 miles. And Soviet air defenses will watch it happen with the helplessness of men staring at gods. Above the Urals, something was climbing into the darkness. July 4th, 1956. 11:47. I am Moscow time. The radar operator at Vnukovo Air Defense Station blinks at his scope. A contact appears at the edge of his screen, altitude reading 21,000 meters, 70,000 feet. He taps the display. The blip remains. He checks calibration, green across the board. He calls his supervisor. The supervisor stares. Altitude readings don't lie, but this reading is impossible. No aircraft flies at 21,000 meters. The Americans don't have engines that function in air that thin. He reports it anyway. Up the chain. Station to sector. Sector to command. In Moscow's central air defense bunker, phones start ringing. The blip drifts southeast. Steady. Unhurried. Tracking shows speed. 740 kilometers per hour. It crosses into Soviet airspace over Minsk, continues toward Moscow. The trajectory is deliberate. The intruder isn't lost. It's sightseeing. Scramble orders crackle through radio sets at Kubinka Air Base. MiG-17 pilots sprint across tarmac. Flight suits still half-zipped. Helmets grabbed mid-run. Engines spool to life with shrieking turbine whine. 3 interceptors roll, accelerate, punch into climb. Captain Mikhail Voronov pulls back on his stick. His MiG claws upward at a 70-degree angle. Afterburner lighting the sky behind him. Altitude unwinds on his instruments. 10,000 meters, 12,000, 14,000. The climb rate slows. His engine labors. At 16.8 meters, 52,000 feet, his MiG shudders. The controls feel mushy, unresponsive. Air this thin can't grip his wings. He pushes higher anyway. 55,000 feet, his service ceiling. The absolute limit. Ground control vectors him toward the target. Target bearing 090, range 40 kilometers, altitude 21,000 meters. 6,000 meters above him. 4 miles of empty sky he cannot reach. Voronov tries. He noses up, trades speed for altitude. His airspeed bleeds. The stall warning screams. His engine coughs. Compression stall, starved for oxygen. He pushes the throttle. The engine flames out completely. Silence. His MiG stops climbing and tips backward, tumbling into a flat spin. He recovers at 8,000 meters, restarts the engine, lands with hands shaking and fuel tanks nearly empty. 2 more interceptors try. Same result. Same helplessness. They claw at air that won't hold them while the intruder glides above like a cruising seabird, watching fish thrash in shallow water. The blip crosses Red Square at 12:14 p.m. Radar operators track it over the Kremlin, over Gorky Park, over every government building in the Soviet capital. The intruder photographs Stalin's tomb, Lenin's mausoleum, the defense ministry itself, every secret installation within a 100-kilometer radius. The hunter became the prey. At 12:31 p.m. the blip turns west. It exits Soviet airspace over Brest. Altitude unchanged, speed unchanged, untouched. Moscow sends urgent cables to every sector command. All units prepare for incursions at extreme altitude. Develop intercept procedures. Target flies at 21,000 meters. The engineers receive the order with confusion. Their MiGs can't fly higher. Physics won't allow it. New engines would take years to develop. New airframes, longer. What are they supposed to do? Shoot prayers into the stratosphere? 3 days pass. The radar operators watch their scopes with fresh dread. July 9th, 1956. 10:22 a.m. The blip appears again. Same altitude, same speed, same arrogant trajectory. It turned west. And 3 days later, it came back. The second flight changes everything. This isn't a fluke. This isn't equipment malfunction. An American aircraft is violating Soviet airspace at will, and Moscow's vaunted air defense network can do nothing but watch. Orders flow from the Kremlin. Stop it. Any method. Any cost. At Dolinsk Air Base, Major Sergei Safronov climbs into his MiG-19, a newer interceptor, faster, with a service ceiling of 58,000 feet, 3,000 feet higher than the MiG-17. Maybe enough. The engine roar drowns out his heartbeat as he launches into vertical climb. His instruments blur. G-forces crush him into his seat. 58,000 feet. His ceiling. The MiG vibrates, wings flexing under stress they weren't designed to handle. Safronov pulls the nose up anyway, converting every knot of speed into altitude. 59,000. 60,000. The airframe screams. Metal fatigue cracks propagate through wing spars with sounds like distant gunshots. The target remains 3,000 feet above him. Safronov tries firing his cannons upward at maximum angle. Ballistic trajectory. Maybe the shells will arc high enough. The cannons thunder. Recoil shoves his MiG downward. The shells climb, slow, fall back. Gravity wins. Gravity always wins. His wings crack. The left wing separates at the root. His MiG tumbles. He ejects at 40,000 feet, parachutes into a forest, breaks both legs. He survives. Others don't. Lieutenant Yevgeny Ivanov pushes his MiG-17 past red line limits over Leningrad. His engine explodes at 57,000 feet. No ejection. The wreckage impacts a field at terminal velocity. They find his body still strapped to the seat. While Soviet pilots die trying to touch the intruder goes shopping. The U-2's camera, the Hikon B, is a marvel of optical engineering. 9-inch lens. Film moving continuously across a focal plane. From 70,000 feet, it resolves objects 8 inches across. It can read Pravda headlines on a park bench, count aircraft on a runway, identify missile types from their shadow profiles. Each flight photographs a swath 30 miles wide and 3,000 miles long. The camera doesn't miss. Every frame is indexed, geo-referenced, cataloged. Soviet air bases appear in crisp black and white. Tupolev bombers lined in neat rows. Maintenance crews visible as dark specks. Missile storage facilities show individual cradles. Submarine construction yards reveal hull sections, assembly schedules, tactical capabilities. The Silver Ghost maps their nuclear test sites at Semipalatinsk, their uranium enrichment plants at Sverdlovsk, their ICBM development facility at Kapustin Yar. Secrets that took Moscow 15 years and 1 million lives to build, exposed in a 6-hour flight. American photo interpreters in Washington count rivets, measure rocket diameters, calculate throw weights. The Kremlin's entire strategic arsenal quantified and filed. In Moscow, Khrushchev receives intelligence reports on each overflight. Dates, routes, photographed installations. The Americans know where every missile sits, every bomber hides, every submarine berths. His generals promise solutions. New interceptors, new missiles, new tactics. None arrive. The flights continue. Monthly, then weekly. He stops attending theater, stops sleeping through nights. He paces his office at 3 a.m., smoking cigarettes, reading damage assessments. The Americans aren't just penetrating Soviet airspace. They're humiliating the workers' paradise, proving socialist engineering inferior, demonstrating that the USSR's defensive shield is tissue paper. Worse, they're doing it visibly. Soviet citizens see the contrails. Factory workers point upward at the white line scratching across blue sky. Everyone knows. Everyone whispers. The invincible motherland can't stop one American spy plane. In the Kremlin, Khrushchev received the flight logs. He stopped sleeping. 24 flights, 4 years, 400 secrets stolen from the sky. Flight 2001 crosses the Caucasus in August 1956, photographing Soviet air defenses along the Turkish border. Flight 2003 maps submarine pens at Murmansk, the Northern Fleet's entire order of battle captured in 90 frames. Flight 2013 penetrates deep into Kazakhstan, finding the ICBM test range at Tyuratam. The Americans now know Soviet rockets use cryogenic fuel, require hours of preparation, cannot launch on warning. The missile gap Khrushchev threatens Washington with? Fiction. Each flight returns with film canisters containing the impossible. Imagery no satellite has yet achieved, no spy has ever delivered, no reconnaissance method has previously obtained. CIA analysts unroll film strips across light tables in Building 213 at Langley. The smell of developer chemicals fills the room. They annotate prints with grease pencils, red marks identifying missile transporters, blue circles around radar installations, yellow highlights on nuclear storage bunkers. Moscow tries everything. They modify MiG-21s with rocket boosters for emergency altitude bursts. The rockets fire. The MiGs climb to 62,000 feet for 17 seconds, then fall back. Not enough. Never enough. They develop unguided anti-aircraft rockets, the M5 and M105, designed to barrage the stratosphere with explosives. Launch crews fire thousands. The rockets arc upward, detonate at programmed altitudes, fill cubic miles of sky with shrapnel. The U-2 flies between detonations or simply routes around launch zones. American pilots report seeing the fireworks below, orange flowers blooming in thin air, impotent and beautiful. Soviet engineers propose ramming. Suicide intercepts. Pilots volunteer. One MiG-19 pilot climbs to maximum altitude, points his nose upward, ejects, letting his unmanned fighter continue ballistically. The MiG reaches 64,000 feet before stalling and tumbling. The U-2 passes 4,000 feet above the wreckage. The flights reveal everything. The SS-6 ICBM at Plesetsk, photographed before construction completes. The Typhoon-class submarine prototype at Severodvinsk. Hull configuration exposed while still on slipways. The Sary-Shagin anti-ballistic missile test site. Every radar dish, every tracking station, every impact crater mapped and measured. American intelligence learns that Soviet strategic forces are weaker than claimed, smaller than feared. The bomber fleet is obsolete Tupolev Tu-16s, not the advanced jets Khrushchev parades through Red Square. The ICBM force numbers in dozens, not hundreds. The entire nuclear arsenal could be destroyed in a first strike. Eisenhower reads Soviet newspaper articles photographed from the edge of space. The resolution is that good. State secrets printed on Pravda's front page, captured by American cameras before Soviet censors even wake up. The humiliation becomes cultural. Soviet engineers, the same minds that built Sputnik, cannot solve this. Their MiGs are too heavy, their engines too weak, their missiles too slow. Everything they design falls short. Literally. In Langley, CIA officers brief congressmen with photographic proof of Soviet weakness. Some laugh. The Great Red Menace, the existential threat, the communist tide supposedly drowning the world, revealed as a paper tiger by a plane built in a Burbank warehouse. U-2 pilots fly with growing confidence. Some request specific targets. Get me the Kremlin garden. I want to see what Khrushchev grows. The photos come back showing vegetable plots. Tomatoes. The leader of world communism grows tomatoes while American cameras count them from 13 miles up. The Americans weren't just winning. They were laughing. Burbank, California, 1954. Inside a rented circus tent next to a plastics factory, Clarence Kelly Johnson sketches an aircraft that shouldn't fly. The requirements are contradictory. Reach 70,000 feet, altitude where air pressure is 1/10 sea level. Fly 4,000 miles without refueling. Carry 700 pounds of cameras. Weigh almost nothing. The laws of aerodynamics say choose 2, maybe 3. Johnson chooses all 4. He starts with wings. Glider wings. 84 feet from tip to tip, wider than a B-52 bomber, attached to a fuselage barely 63 feet long. The aspect ratio is obscene. The wings are skeletal structures, spars and ribs covered in aluminum skin so thin you can dent it with your thumb. They flex. 6 feet of flex at the tips during flight. The wings breathe, bend, twist. They have to. Rigid wings this long would snap. The fuselage is a tube. Literally. A titanium tube 4 feet in diameter. Housing pilot, engine, and fuel. No weapons, no armor. No pressurization for the pilot. He wears a full pressure suit like an astronaut, breathing pure oxygen. The cockpit smells like rubber and sweat. The canopy frosts over at altitude. Pilots navigate partially blind, wiping ice crystals from the inside of the glass with gloved hands. The landing gear is borrowed from a bicycle. 2 wheels on the center line, one under the nose, one under the tail. That's it. On takeoff, small-wheeled pogos support the wingtips. They fall away as the aircraft lifts off. On landing, the U-2 touches down on its 2 main wheels, balances like a tightrope walker, then tips onto one wingtip, which grinds against concrete. Ground crews sprint out with new titanium skid plates after every landing. Johnson's engine choice, the Pratt & Whitney J57. A turbojet designed for the B-52, modified to burn a special fuel blend, a mixture of low-volatility JP7 with exotic additives that won't boil at high altitude. The fuel itself costs more per gallon than champagne. It has to. Normal jet fuel vaporizes in the stratosphere's near vacuum. The fuel tanks aren't sealed. They leak on the ground, weeping puddles onto tarmac. Only at altitude, when the airframe chills to -70 Fahrenheit, do the metal panels contract enough to seal. The U-2 takes off dripping and lands dripping. In between, it's airtight. The aircraft is a paradox wrapped in aluminum foil. Strong enough to survive stratospheric flight. Fragile enough that maintenance crews puncture the skin with careless elbows. Fast enough to outrun MiGs. Slow enough to stall at 95 knots, landing speed faster than most aircraft's takeoff speed. Pilots call it the Dragon Lady. Beautiful, deadly, unforgiving of mistakes. The wings make it untouchable. The altitude makes it invisible. The cameras make it invaluable. But every advantage carries a curse. The enormous wings create radar cross-section the size of a barn door. The single engine is a single point of failure. The fragile airframe cannot survive battle damage. One bullet punctures fuel tanks. One shrapnel fragment severs control cables. One proximity blast fragments the structure. The U-2 dominates through absence of threat. It survives because nothing can reach it. But if something ever does reach it, if Soviet engineers ever solve the altitude problem, the Dragon Lady will die as easily as tissue paper in a blowtorch. Everything that made it untouchable also made it killable. The film arrives in metal canisters still cold from high-altitude flight. CIA photo interpreters splice it onto light table reels in temperature-controlled rooms that smell like acetic acid and anticipation. They lean close, magnifying glasses catching fluorescent light, counting the impossible. Mission 2003, Plesetsk Cosmodrome. The analysts count ICBM silos. Expected number based on Soviet claims, 140. Actual number visible in the photographs, 12. 12 operational silos. The rest are construction sites, empty pads, propaganda fiction. Khrushchev has been bluffing. The missile gap that terrified American strategists, the supposed Soviet advantage in ICBMs, the hundreds of nuclear-tipped rockets allegedly aimed at American cities, doesn't exist. The U-2 photographs prove it. Frame after frame shows the truth. Soviet ICBM production is years behind schedule. Their vaunted SS-6 rocket requires 20 hours of fueling, cannot be stored ready to launch, sits vulnerable on exposed pads. The Americans could destroy the entire Soviet strategic arsenal in an afternoon. Mission 2009, Severodvinsk Naval Shipyard. The photographs reveal submarine construction timelines. The Kremlin claims 8 nuclear submarines operational. The photos show 3. 2 are in dry dock with hull sections missing. The third has scaffolding still attached. Soviet naval power, exposed as theater. Mission 2014, Kapustin Yar Weapons Range. The U-2 captures a Soviet ballistic missile test. Launch, flight, impact. Analysts measure the crater, calculate yield, determine accuracy. The SS-7 ICBM misses its target by 11 kilometers. American Minutemen hit within 400 meters. The technological gap runs opposite Soviet propaganda. Every flight strips another layer of deception. The fearsome Red Army? Their tank divisions photographed at parade rest, revealing maintenance backlogs and fuel shortages. The unstoppable bomber fleet? Obsolete Tu-16s that American F-106 interceptors could massacre. The nuclear arsenal that supposedly guarantees Soviet victory? Small enough to count on fingers and toes. Eisenhower receives the briefings in the Oval Office. He reads them with the satisfaction of a poker player seeing his opponent's cards. The photographs give him leverage, certainty. When Khrushchev threatens nuclear war over Berlin, Eisenhower knows the threat is empty. When Soviet ambassadors demand concessions, American negotiators know the truth. Moscow is weak, exposed, desperate. The U-2 doesn't just gather intelligence, it shapes policy. Arms-controlled negotiations proceed with American confidence. Defense budgets adjust to reality rather than fear. The entire Cold War recalibrates around photographic truth. But the intelligence cuts deeper than missiles and submarines. The U-2 photographs Soviet daily life. Breadlines in Leningrad, longer than claimed. Factory output in Magnitogorsk, lower than reported. Agricultural yields in Ukraine. Famine conditions despite propaganda of abundance. The worker's paradise is hungry, inefficient, fragile. One photograph becomes legendary. A U-2 over Moscow captures Red Square during a military parade. Analysts can read the Pravda newspaper held by a man in the crowd. The headline, Soviet air defenses impenetrable. The photo is dated the same day the U-2 flew over to take the picture. The irony is so perfect that CIA officers frame it, hang it in the corridors of Langley. The humiliation is total. Khrushchev cannot protect his skies, cannot hide his weaknesses, cannot stop American eyes from cataloging every secret, every failure, every lie. Knowledge is power. And Moscow had been stripped naked. Desperation breeds innovation. Humiliation breeds rage. Rage breeds the S-75 Divina. In 1957, Soviet engineers at KB-1 Design Bureau receive orders from the Kremlin. Develop a surface-to-air missile capable of reaching 25,000 meters. No compromises, no excuses. The designer, Pyotr Grushin, knows what this means. Stop the U-2. Stop it, or face consequences that end careers and sometimes lives. Grushin's problem is physics. Missiles are rockets strapped to explosives. Rockets need fuel. Fuel has mass. Mass resists acceleration. To reach 70,000 feet, the missile must be large enough to carry sufficient fuel, but small enough to accelerate quickly. The equations fight each other. He chooses size. The S-75 missile stretches 11 meters long, weighs 2,300 kilograms at launch. A telephone pole filled with vengeance. Two-stage design. A solid fuel booster for initial acceleration, then a liquid fuel sustainer for high-altitude flight. The warhead carries 195 kilograms of high explosive surrounded by steel rods. Pre-fragmented shrapnel designed to shred aircraft skin. The guidance system is the breakthrough. Radio command guidance. Ground-based radar tracks both target and missile. A computer calculates intercept trajectory. Radio transmitters send course corrections to the missile in flight. The missile doesn't need to be smart. It just needs to obey. 3 radars working in concert: early warning, target tracking, missile guidance. The system is called the S-75 Dvina, NATO designation, SA-2 guideline. Testing begins in 1958. Early launches fail, missiles tumble, guidance malfunctions. Warheads detonate prematurely or not at all. Engineers work 20-hour shifts in facilities that smell like hydraulic fluid and desperation. They refine, iterate, fix failure modes one by one. By 1959, the system works. Test missiles reach 27,000 meters, 88,000 feet. Higher than any U-2 has ever flown. The kill radius of the fragmentation warhead, 250 meters, plenty. If the missile gets close, The U-2's fragile airframe cannot survive. Production accelerates. Factories across the USSR manufacture components, missiles, launchers, radar trucks. The system is mobile. 6 missiles on trailers, radar vehicles, command post, all towable by trucks. A battery can deploy in hours, activate in minutes, relocate after firing to avoid counterattack. By April 1960, the Soviet Union has deployed 42 S-75 battalions. Some guard Moscow. Others protect ICBM sites, naval bases, nuclear facilities. The installations the U-2 keeps photographing. The sites form a network. Overlapping coverage. No gaps. Soviet crews train obsessively. Radar operators practice tracking high-altitude targets. Launch crews rehearse firing sequences until they can prepare missiles in under 4 minutes. They wait. They watch the sky. They know the Americans will come again. They always come. In Washington, CIA analysts note Soviet SAM deployments through, ironically, U-2 photography. The missiles appear in reconnaissance images. Launch rails, radar dishes, support vehicles. American intelligence briefs U-2 pilots. Avoid known SAM sites, fly evasive routes, stay above 70,000 feet. The S-75's maximum altitude is theoretical, untested in combat. Maybe the missiles can't actually reach operational U-2 cruising altitude. Maybe Soviet engineering is still inadequate. Maybe. On April 9, 1960, the Soviet Union declares all S-75 batteries fully operational. Crews are trained, systems are calibrated, fire control procedures are established, the network is live. In 3 weeks, an American pilot will test whether maybe is enough. April 9, 1960. The system goes operational. 3 weeks remain. May 1, 1960. 5:36 a.m. local time. Peshawar Air Base, Pakistan. Francis Gary Powers walks across tarmac toward a U-2 painted matte black, number Article 360. He's done this 13 times before. Routine. He wears a partial pressure suit that smells like rubber and talcum powder. His flight plan: cross Afghanistan, enter Soviet airspace near Stalinabad, fly north across the USSR photographing ICBM sites, exit over Norway. Mission duration, 9 hours. He carries a silver dollar containing a poison pin, just in case. 6:26 a.m. Wheels up. The U-2 climbs into morning sky that shifts from blue to indigo to black. Powers levels at 7,500 feet. Autopilot engaged. His cockpit is silent except for oxygen hissing through his helmet and the muted roar of the J-57 engine behind him. Below, the Hindu Kush Mountains look like wrinkled paper. 9:15 a.m. Powers crosses into Soviet airspace. The camera activates. Film advances with mechanical precision. Every 7 seconds, a frame. Every frame captures 30 square miles of Soviet territory. Near Sverdlovsk, 200 miles inside the USSR, Soviet radar picks him up. The blip appears at 21,500 meters. The duty officer makes a phone call. Then another. Authorization climbs the chain to Moscow. To the Kremlin. Launch authority granted. At SAM Site 12, south of Sverdlovsk, the alert sounds. Crew scrambles. Battery Commander Major Mikhail Voronov, no relation to the MiG pilot, watches the target track across his radar scope. Altitude confirmed, 21,500 meters. Speed, 740 kilometers per hour. Course, north-northwest. Tracking is solid. Lock achieved. Prepare to launch. Powers feels nothing, sees nothing. The sky at altitude is empty, peaceful. The Ural Mountains slide beneath him in crisp black and white through his drift sight. He's thinking about landing in Norway. Hot coffee. Debriefing. Launch! 14 S-75 missiles ignite simultaneously from sites surrounding Sverdlovsk. White exhaust plumes tear upward. The missiles accelerate through 1,000 meters per second, faster than rifle bullets. Ground radar tracks both target and missiles. Course corrections transmit. The missiles adjust, homing. Powers notices an orange flash below. Far below. 40,000 feet below. Artillery fire? SAMs? He's been briefed. Soviet missiles can't reach him. Theoretical maximum is 88,000 feet, but that's in ideal conditions, clean shots, perfect trajectories. He's at 70,500 feet and the missiles are launching from lower altitude. Physics is on his side. 9:53 a.m. One S-75 warhead detonates 100 meters behind the U-2's tail. The proximity fuse works perfectly. The warhead converts 195 kilograms of high explosive into a cloud of steel fragments moving at 3,000 meters per second. The U-2 disintegrates. Powers feels a massive thump, something hitting the airframe, then violent yaw. The tail is gone, severed. The fuselage tumbles, spinning, gyroscopic forces pinning him to the seat. He reaches for the ejection handle. Can't pull it. G-forces are too strong. His arms weigh 100 pounds each. The canopy rips away at 40,000 feet. Wind tears at him. He's still strapped in, still attached to the dying aircraft. Partial ejection. He unbuckles manually, falls free, pulls the ripcord. His parachute deploys at 15,000 feet. He lands in a field near Degtyarsk, alive, conscious, surrounded. The Soviets found the camera, and the pilot. The wreckage lands in a potato field. Soviet soldiers arrive within minutes, trucks, officers, KGB agents in black sedans. They find the camera intact, 70 feet of film still loaded, undeveloped but recoverable. Every frame will show what the Americans were looking for. Every frame proves 4 years of violation. They find Powers 3 kilometers away, tangled in his parachute, surrounded by farmers with pitchforks. He's wearing a partial pressure suit with NASA patches, deniability theater that fools no one. In his pockets, Soviet rubles, gold coins, Turkish currency, and the suicide pin, which he didn't use. Khrushchev receives the news in his dacha. He reads the report twice, then he smiles. For 4 years, American spy planes have humiliated Soviet defenses, photographed state secrets, exposed military weakness, made mockery of socialist engineering. Every flight was a national disgrace, a reminder that the USSR couldn't protect its own airspace. Now finally, vindication. Khrushchev orders silence. No announcements. Let the Americans sweat. On May 5th, NASA issues a cover story. A weather research aircraft went missing over Turkey, possibly strayed into Soviet airspace due to oxygen system failure. The pilot is probably dead. May 7th. Khrushchev addresses the Supreme Soviet. He waits for the chamber to quiet. Then, I must report to you a violation of our state borders. He pauses. The silence is absolute. We shot down an American spy plane, and we have the pilot, alive. The chamber erupts. Applause thunders off marble walls. The smell of tobacco smoke and triumph fills the air. Khrushchev produces photographs, wreckage, camera equipment, Powers in custody. The evidence is irrefutable. In Washington, Eisenhower receives the news like a punch to the stomach. NASA's cover story is destroyed. The CIA's program is exposed. Worse, a Paris summit with Khrushchev is scheduled for May 16th. 4 power talks, USA, USSR, Britain, France, to reduce Cold War tensions. The summit was supposed to ease nuclear fears. Now it's doomed. May 16th, Paris. Khrushchev arrives demanding an apology. Eisenhower refuses. The summit collapses before discussions begin. Khrushchev storms out, calling Americans aggressors and pirates. The photo shows him red-faced, gesturing wildly. Diplomacy dies in a hotel conference room that smells like stale coffee and ruined chances. August 1960, Moscow. Powers stands trial for espionage. The courtroom is pure theater. Soviet prosecutors controlled testimony, predetermined verdict. Powers is sentenced to 10 years. He serves 21 months before a prisoner exchange on Gliniga Bridge trades him for Soviet spy Rudolf Abel. Khrushchev declares total victory. Soviet technology triumphed. Soviet defenses proved impenetrable. The Americans will think twice before violating sacred socialist airspace again. But the truth lives in metal filing cabinets at CIA headquarters. 24 successful missions. 4 years of photography. Every Soviet ICBM site mapped. Every submarine pen documented. Every bomber base cataloged. The Americans know Soviet nuclear forces number in dozens, not hundreds. They know the missile gap is fiction. They know Khrushchev's threats are bluffs backed by nothing. 1 U-2 shot down. 1 pilot captured. 1 diplomatic disaster. Versus 400 strategic secrets that prevented World War III. The intelligence gathered between 1956 and 1960 proved the Soviet Union couldn't win a nuclear war. Proved American first strike capability was overwhelming. Proved Khrushchev's bluster was compensation for weakness. That knowledge, hard, photographic, irrefutable, allowed Kennedy to face down Soviet missiles in Cuba, allowed détente, allowed the Cold War to remain cold. The U-2 lost one battle, but won the war that never happened.